This second video details the accident reconstruction performed by Sergeant Don Schmaltzbauer, who at the time was the lead accident reconstructionist for the Minnesota Highway Patrol. This video includes very probable reasoning for why and how the vehicle left the roadway, why Officer Hoeft was holding his weapon in his hand at that time, and why the weapon discharged. Again, Don is not only an expert in the field of accident reconstruction, but has the 30 years experience to understand how officers handle their weapons both in their stations and in their vehicles.
So at this point, I looked at this, and 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 I called my friend, Dr. Schmaltzbauer. I said, Don, why don't I buy you lunch? I've got a case to show you. And that changed everything when Don took a look at this. First thing he said to me when he looked at this whole thing, and I said, I don't know how to put this together. I really don't even understand what was going on in this squad car, but there's enough unusual things happening here. He said, Janice, this is not a suicide, and I think I can prove it. And I'm going to turn this over to you here now.
And we sat down, we looked at this, and I said, there's things that we have to look at specifically in this case. And so what we needed to do was to do some testing, some real empirical, real-world testing. What happened in that squad? Mr. Michaels had exposed that we found the teardrop marks, tire marks on the curbing. Very good evidence. How does it cause it? How can we replicate that to show that the squad made those marks and how it came off that curb, on and off again? So I contacted the St. Louis Park PD, and I basically talked to them what we were doing, what I would like to do, and as a reconstructionist I kind of explained we need to look at some vehicle dynamics in this case. And they agreed that they would support me in this endeavor, and what we would do is they'd give me a squad, and we did this on a Saturday, and they provided several officers for traffic direction. And we needed to test and run the squad across this curb area to find out what are the vehicle dynamics involved in this. And once we understand the vehicle dynamics, now can we understand what happened to Ryan inside that vehicle? And that's what we're trying to demonstrate. As Dr. Amatuzio demonstrated, we have the MP5 clip. This was an exemplar squad. This is as close as we could get. There's no PVT in here, but the lateral armrest and the MDT, everything was pretty much identical. What we did to prep is obviously, as I did my hair here today again, we marked it, and we also had the weapon that he was carrying, the H&K 45 caliber. We marked those positions on the head. And then this would be the position. I went into the squad car, positioned myself to the point where the gun was in the position where it had been fired, and then the alignment with the weapon to where the headrest or the visor of the projectile impact was observed and documented by the Hennepin County Crime Lab. You can see this position here. My arm is back and down. Everybody notice that? How the position, in order for that to occur, I have to be back and down. This gives another example. Here, you can see I'm getting somewhat tight up against the clips of the MP5. And it just shows where the projectile impacted on the visor. How we set up the squad to do the testing. We set up a video camera that was mounted on the passenger side window, basically videotaping my right side to show what my arm movement will be and what my body will do during the testing of the curb strikes. We also mounted an accelerometer on the windshield of the vehicle, and that's basically to measure the lateral G-forces that the vehicle is going to experience on that curb strike. And the question here is probably a good time to kind of show, what we're trying to show here. This is the gun right here. It's the MP H&K 45 caliber. It has 12-round magazine and one in the chamber. It's a double action. This is the safety lever right here, and it's on the left side of the gun. And like some of you experienced with the Glock has no cocking, no lever. It has no safety. It's a double action firing gun. This has a safety, and it's a lever action. And there's not much of a click between fire and safety. You can see I don't move it very much. And if you're not comfortable with this weapon, you're probably not going to realize what you have the gun set on. Is it on safety or is it on hot? And then you have the decocking lever, which is down below here all the way down. But again, there's not much movement between this. So what our conclusion was that Ryan had just booked a prisoner at the station. And unlike by policy and what officers do and what policy says, you're supposed to put the gun in a vault, book the prisoner, take your gun, reholster, and go back to patrol. In some cases, officers don't do that. They secure their weapon inside the vehicle, either in their gun bag, under the seat, between the seats, and they lock the car so the gun's not accessible. In the case that they get a call that they run out the door, now they've forgot the gun in the gun vault, they're halfway to the call, and they have no weapon. And I was just having lunch with some active and retired law enforcement a couple of months ago, and by surprise some stories were told. And out of not trying to retrieve information from anybody, but one of the deputies who was, he's been on for a few years, but he said, when I was a dispatcher, I remember this domestic call where the deputies came in, they booked this guy on a domestic arrest, and he said, and we got another domestic, and this one was a pretty serious domestic, so I dispatched him to that. The deputies go running out the sheriff's office, and he says, they get half of the call, and I realized that, you know what, their guns are still in my drawer here, because at that point, at that sheriff's office, the deputies would go in, deposit their guns at the sheriff's office, he'd keep them in a drawer until they're done booking. Well, the deputies had ran out the door and totally forgot their guns. So officers, a lot of the times, are secured in the car in case something happens. They can retrieve the gun and do it. And me, when I first started in law enforcement, there's a couple times I drove away from the sheriff's office after booking, and I'm driving along, and something just doesn't feel right here. And sure enough, darn, I forgot my weapon, so I have to go back and retrieve it. So our conclusion was that Ryan, being a new officer, just booked a prisoner, is going to be driving his vehicle, okay? And he forgets to retrieve his weapon and put it in his holster. So he retrieves it from the area that he had stowed it, and as he's driving, he wants to make sure that it's operational, and that wherever he put it, that nothing had hampered the performance of this weapon. So he's going to first feel, make sure the safety is on or off, and being inexperienced, what's your natural instinct to do? What do you think?
Look at it.
You're going to look at it, right? And the F for fire and S for safety on here is not highly illuminated. So it's not something you can readily see. And so you're going to look at it. And if you're driving and looking, what's going to happen? If I'm looking this way and steering, what typically happens if you remember from your driving experiences? Yeah, you're going to go probably the same direction, right? And this gun, it's heavy without ammunition in it. This gun, if you have 12 rounds and one in the chamber, is going to be a heavy gun. So the chances are he's going to be resting his elbow on that lateral armrest prior to him holstering it to make sure that the gun performance is correct.
What about the seat belt then?
And then in order to holster the belt, on mine here, I'm a lefty, so but his would be on the right, and the seatbelt is right over the holster area. And so the seatbelt would have to be unlatched in order for him to holster the weapon. And what we did is, from the photos that Mr. Michaels had taken, we used those to approximate, using the photos, and mark the pavement exactly where the marks and impact would have taken place. And this kind of gives you an idea. These are the impact marks right here, and the vehicle ended up going this direction here afterwards. And we measured the 11 feet 6 inches that Mr. Michaels had measured, so we were in the same amount of distance that he had measured that day. What we found results is a very sharp jolt, more so, as Mr. Michaels stated, with the police package tire, than you are with the normal tire. And with the tire going up over the curb and onto the grass, there's going to be more resistance on that right side. We're going to have suspension loading and unloading. So we're going to have some vehicle dynamics going on. And the vehicle, with the rolling resistance on the right side, will have a tendency to go right. And if you remember what Mr. Michaels showed you earlier, there's a sign right on that corner of that intersection there for pedestrian crossing.
Now, may I add something here? Not only will it have a tendency to go right, but if you look at that car, as it hits the curb, everything goes up. Now I'm coming down with my tire, my right tire, on a softer surface that has a higher rolling resistance, and I have added vehicle thrust and vehicle weight because the suspension system is rebounded. So that, unless there is an impulse given to that vehicle, it is going to go further onto the grass, further toward the sidewalk, further toward the front lawn. There is something there that had to change the direction of the vehicle. It's dynamically impossible for that thing to do anything but go right.
So what we did is we marked the points on the curb, and we ran several tests here at 5, 20, 30, 32, and 35 miles per hour. As I recall, the speed limit is 35 miles per hour in that area. The issue that we had here, of course, is trying to make it, thing to remember is make it an unexpected, involuntary event, okay? I'm going to be doing these curb tests, but I, as a driver, I know what's going to happen, right? Picture yourself in the same squad car, looking at your weapon, trying to figure out if it's on fire or unsafe, and hitting that curb unexpectedly, okay? I know what's going to happen. I got to control the car. I'm trying to watch all this stuff. I'm trying not to run over the videographer. And, so I tried my best to be, when I hit that curb, is to let my body relax. And I think that the videos kind of express or show exactly the dynamics that went inside that vehicle. And try to keep in mind when we go through these videos, keep in mind when you see them, when I make the approach, when I hit the curb, look what happens to the vehicle. There's a change in direction. I'm coming at an angle, but after I hit the curb, remember it's 11 feet 6 inches, the vehicle changes direction, but yet naturally it's supposed to go to the right, because there's less rolling resistance there. It's supposed to go more straight towards the sign. Why is there a turn? Why does the vehicle change direction? What's your normal reaction if you're driving along the road and you hit something? Correct, right? You're going to steer. So there had to have been steering input into this vehicle in order for it to go up the curb and then down the curb, as Mr. Michaels had pointed out from his observation of those marks, and I concur with him, is that he has to go up and down. And the only way he can get down is input, steering input. We're covering, as we stated earlier, that 11.6 inches in 0.26 seconds. So this impact, Ryan did not have time to really think, other than to his human reaction to react, and that was it. It's happened that fast. And here's the slides. This is myself getting into the squad. And this is the first run. And I did wear my seatbelt. It's 5 miles an hour, and again, it's not truly an exemplar of what happened. Now this is at 20. Again, I'm kind of feeling out the vehicle to see what's going to happen. And now watch at 20 miles per hour. See the dynamics, the curb hit, the change in direction, what happens to me.
Watch his elbow, watch his arm drop.
30. Now watch what happens at 30 miles per hour here. And that's from somebody who knows something's going to happen. Now, think of yourself as having that being totally unexpected. This is 32, and even going up a few miles per hour, it got pretty hairy. And this time I'm riding with my elbow down just to see if there's a different reaction to it. And it's still pretty good, but it's my belief that Ryan would have had his elbow on that armrest because it was natural for him, plus the gun was heavy. And this is at 35, and you can see this gets pretty hairy.
Notice how your head went way over to the right.
Again at 35. Now G-forces, just to go through these real quick, at 20 miles per hour, this is what the accelerometer wrote. This is just going down the road, a little movement here, but you can see the impact spike up to 0.5, and then on the turn to the left, 0.3 Gs. 30 miles per hour is 0.5, not as much on 0.12 Gs on the rebound. At 32 miles per hour, it was a 0.82 Gs, and then a minus 0.56 Gs. So you can see you're driving down the road, and imagine introducing a 0.8 G to you immediately. Okay, unexpectedly. And at 35 was about 0.6 to minus 0.30. So it's really dependent where I hit the curb and what angle I hit the curb at. But in the event, these are all pretty much, if you look at the scale here, it's pretty much the same. It's a pretty good whack. And it's unexpected. It's going to surprise you. And the gunshot wound to head caused by involuntary trigger pull when right arm side impacted equipment during curb impact. And if I could just demonstrate that for you here just real quick, is if I'm sitting in the squad, and I'll just use the armrest here, it's just not quite the same. You're going down the road, I'm driving, and I got my weapon, and I'm looking at it, and I'm trying to feel for it. I drift off to the right, I hit the curb, and boom. And my natural reaction, and what's going to happen in the impact, is boom, he's going to go like this. His arm's going to slide off, and it's going to go down in this fashion here. He's going to impact the MP5 clip, the side of the car. The car is now going back to the left. He inputted steering.
Right. And the angle.
The angle's down here.
Is going to be correct going up into the visor. And then you're going to steer back.
Back here. He's going to come in. Let's go like this, unexpectedly. The gun will go down on the head. That'll cause the imprint to the head. And what's your reflex when you have to do an emergency steering maneuver? What are you doing with your hand? Clenching, right? You're grasping. What are you naturally going to do with your right hand? You're going to clench and grasp, right? So you're going to squeeze down. What do you hit? The trigger. Okay? And then he impacts, he comes out. Now, if I'm, as the original autopsy showed, that he chambered a gun, chambered a bullet, took the safety off, and he would have to position himself in the car in this position and then pull the trigger. Okay? I got a 45 H&K. With the firing of the weapon, what's going to happen to the recoil? If I'm steady in this position, no vehicle dynamics.
Where's the weapon going to land?
Where's the weapon going to go?
It's dropped down.
It's going to go down this way, right? You expect to see it maybe on the right seat, maybe behind the seat, next to the roll cage, or somewhere in there, and his hand somewhere in here, and his body laying in this position. How was he found? He was found over on this side, okay? The gun wasn't over here, the gun's down here. How does the gun get from a static position like this, boom, to his feet? There has to be an impulse. There has to be a force introduced to that. So you have the curve hit, it's bang, like this, the recoil, he comes back, and the gun goes forward, and his hand goes forward also. And he's to the left like this. That's what the impulse or the movement and what the evidence shows, and how this accidental gun, or accidental shooting took place. It wasn't a suicide. And it's difficult for other people who looked at it to understand the dynamics of the case and what's happening. And it happens so quick that it's hard to make a valuable understanding of what actually has taken place.
This concludes the accident scene investigation portion of this video.